individual. And what we're not talking about estate planning, and we're not talking about business planning, but this is more of a personal planning. So I want to begin our call today by first discussing different needs analysis strategies. Needs analysis, of course, it's a fundamental approach that can be done with clients to help determine how much life insurance they need. Generally, there's two different methods that are most commonly used, and you can go back to McGill's Life Insurance 101. I remember some of the classes I took when I was studying for CLU, and this is a part of it. And the two different methods commonly used are the needs-based analysis and the human life approach. And both methods have their merits, and we're going to review them in detail in the subsequent slides. But I want you to keep in mind that financial journalists tend to prefer simplistic rules of thumb, such as like multiples of annual income. The reason they do that, because it's short, it's easy to explain. However, there is a trap in that type of seductive simplicity, and an attempt to determine an individual's life insurance needs upon a fair amount of client information, that's of questionable worth. And sometimes clients do resist in talking to you and opening up, providing the information that's necessary for an appropriate and a thorough analysis of their needs. Folks, this is where you step in as the agent, as an insurance agent, to get to know your client better in order to make a proper evaluation and ultimately recommendation to purchase life insurance. So as I just mentioned, the two most common methods to determine how much insurance you should have are needs-based and human life approach. So let's first start with the needs-based approach. Generally, this is the simpler method to utilize for life insurance needs analysis. You can do this analysis on a legal pad. You can do it just on a board if you're drawing. You can even do this in a Zoom presentation. Very easy. What it does is it basically seeks to determine how much insurance is needed by creating a list of items incurred, if the client were to suddenly pass away. And what it'll do is it'll combine that amount with expected future income loss. One challenging aspect of needs analysis is that some needs may change over time. We know that, such as, they're related to their children, the children grow up, for example. What are some of the expenses that may immediately occur when the client dies? Well, every client or prospect situation is different. We all know that. And that's actually what makes it exciting about what we do in our business. However, here are a few common examples that you may see, and I'm just kind of posting some of these up here. You see them. We've got expenses listed, funeral costs, people incur debt, college expenses if you have kids and you have higher education that comes into play, maybe looking at a portion of your income that you need to replace if you're the breadwinner. And finally, either mortgages if you own a home or rental. But one important point to consider here is how much income to replace and for how long. And once all the items have been budgeted for, simply add them up, and that's the amount of insurance that's needed. That's kind of the simple needs-based approach. The human life approach is a little different. What it does is it looks at the overall financial loss that a family may incur if the insured was to pass away. And it'll normally go into further detail regarding income and benefits that the insured provides to the family compared to the needs-based. That's really, and this is basically used for working families more often than not, and it's more involved than a needs-based. So it does get very, very detailed on this. This approach will take an in-depth interview of a review of not only the insured's income, but also if their income is expected to significantly rise in the future. So it takes a snapshot of not only now, but looks in the future and say, if my income were to go up, how much of that needs to be considered? Furthermore, it's going to look at the benefits that the insured provides for healthcare costs, the age of the client, and then finally, when they may be expected to retire. Obviously, people are working longer these days. They're working beyond 65, 67, even 70 years of age. So in other words, it's going to seek to determine the lifetime total financial contribution the family may lose if the insured were to unexpectedly pass away. Now, both of these approaches that I mentioned may have the potential strengths and weaknesses of each one of them. They're very unique in their way. But of course, it's important to look at the income that could be lost if the insured were to pass away. Yet at the same time, it's also important that the potential surviving spouse or the family would have enough liquidity to keep the household afloat and to pay immediate obligations. And this is what we're showing here on this screen. There could be a missing ingredient to both of these needs analysis approaches, though, and that's the conversation about the length of time that we really need to look at to protect these certain risks. So in other words, not all risks are created equal. Some risks may be temporary in nature, and then others may, they may be there for a long time. They may never go away as long as your client's alive. So it's not just about how much insurance is needed, but how long is that need going to be around? Not just how much, but how long is that need going to be around? So another problem that may arise to using a needs analysis is how a typical insurance plan may be implemented. And regardless of which one you use, a life insurance discussion with your client may be, it may go, along the lines of, that you're meeting with the client, you conduct a needs analysis, but you got to remember that you need to ask the emotional questions to the client. I've always said this, and I may have said this in previous presentations, that life insurance is bought out of emotion, not out of logic. So you have to emotionally get the client involved. You have to ask them those important questions and get them to open up about what exactly it is that they want to have covered. What's important to them? If you were to suddenly die, how would your loved ones manage? These are critical questions, hard questions to ask, but important questions so that they open up. And then once you complete it, you determine the amount of life insurance. You have present solutions, and normally, but not always, term insurance comes into play, and possibly permanent insurance. Now, since the client may not fully understand, what permanent insurance is and the permanent nature of some of the needs that they're, ultimately protecting against, quite often they gravitate and they choose term insurance rather than permanent insurance. And we all know that term insurance is less costly generally than permanent insurance. And that's really, unfortunately, where some clients gravitate to. And our job is to make sure that we're educating them on the difference between permanent and term insurance. So one problem may arise with the term-only life insurance approach is that, a client may outlive their coverage. We know that. Term has a set expiration date. And when that date occurs, it's going to become what we call annually renewable. It may be a level benefit for a certain time period, and after that, it becomes annually renewable. And if you've seen the numbers, you know that it becomes unmanageable and the numbers start to explode. They start to grow exponentially. And, the question is, how can we help our clients so that their life insurance coverage not only meets their obligations today, but looks in the future and meeting their obligations in the future? So let me pose an example. Okay, so you got a 35-year-old and he purchases a 20-year term policy today. It's reasonable to think that, he or she will be alive at age 55, 20 years later, right? Well, the question is, will they have, at age 55, do they suddenly have no need for life insurance? Or are they still working? Do they still need to protect their income? Do they still have a mortgage outstanding? Do they need to make sure that the debt and the expenses are covered if something happens to them? Are they looking at survivorship protection? These are the questions that are posed. So here's where we jump into this. I want to present to you, a different way of approaching this. It's an alternative needs analysis, and we're going to introduce a different method of this. And this presentation is something that you can walk a client through very easily, and by doing so, you're going to hopefully determine how much insurance is needed today and tomorrow. And we're going to finish up, and I'll show you the hypothetical example of how this works. But stay with me on this. Take some good notes, but remember that this is being recorded, so you can go back and you can review this if you're, if I'm going too fast or you can't quite write all these down, but here's where we jump into this. What may be helpful about the concept we're going to discuss is that it changes the conversation, not just talking about the total amount of insurance that's needed, but it's also going to include the potential time frame. How long? How long is this need going to be around? So in other words, it's not just about how much, but equally important, how long do you need that coverage? So let's begin by asking the client what they're actually trying to protect in the event of death. Of course, every client's going to be different, so there's some common responses that you may hear. And here's on the left side, I'm going to list the most important things that we see, or the most common things we see. Home mortgage, for example. We've got other areas such as debts like student loans, credit cards, auto loans, and of course, children can come into play, and there's something that a life insurance agent should know about. So if the client does have children, it's important to know whether they want to pay for their children's education, that could come into play, or perhaps they want to go to a trade school. Not necessarily college or universities are in the future for every child, but you hopefully want to gain some type of experience and skill, and that could be a trade school, and trade schools cost too. So that's something to keep in mind. Of course, one important item is the client's income, and it's important to find out what their gross income is. And then once you have that gross income figure, create what we call a net need. What do I mean by net need? It's the amount of income that the client actually contributes to the family. It's important to consider that gross income, because of such items like income tax, Social Security tax, employer retirement plan contributions like your 401, things like that, that all gets withheld, and it's not the gross income, it's the net income. So this money that you're contributing in those areas never support the insured's family. It's the net income. And since the insured is going to be dead, and therefore they wouldn't be a financial liability on the family because they're not consuming food, they're not needing medicine, clothing, paying for work, needing 2 cars, you're down to 1 car. Some of those expenses get reduced. So the family, they would no longer need to support the deceased insured financially, as if they were alive. So this is something you keep in mind when you're discussing income protection. It's not just the fact that, I'm making $50,000 a year and a multiple of 10 means I need 500,000. Folks, it's not just that easy. This is where you kind of get into the weeds and you talk about the difference between gross income and net income. So what we're going to be using is, in this example here, is a net income calculation to determine how much income is needed. I hope that makes sense. And if you have any questions on that, well, let's, hold the questions, but let's talk about this at the end. So I'm not going to make a recommendation as, to what percentage of income should be replaced. I'm not saying that, you should be replacing 50%, 80%, or whatever. That's a conversation that you need to be having with your client or prospect. However, in the case study that we are going to show, we're going to use something like a 60% or 70% of gross income to determine the net income. Again, let me make sure that you understand, I'm not making a recommendation as to how much income you need to consider having replaced and protected. It's an individual choice. But, if they're married, if they've got a life partner, they will want to protect their spouse and potentially provide some liquidity to help offset any immediate obligations and to provide a potential financial buffer. So there's also going to be final expenses or burial expenses. These obviously the costs are different depending on what part of the country you live in. And then the last two here, chronic illness and income tax. This is something that not a lot of clients take into consideration, and you may not be talking to them much. And this is important to have that conversation. Income tax discussion will be dependent on whether the insured, your client, has saved money and something like that. But these are two areas that you need to be talking to about, especially if they're considering building that type of financial buffer in later years. Maybe they've had personal experiences with a family. They've had to take care of a family member, and they know firsthand, not just emotionally, but financially, what a toll it can take on someone for chronic illness expenses. So again, every client is different, but these are some of the common examples that clients are going to be concerned about, when they're protecting it. So we've got all these needs that are listed on the left side here. Let's just go another step further. And this is what you would do. You kind of list these things on a piece of paper with your client, discuss how these needs can change over time. And the question is, how does that look like? Well, hopefully as the insured gets older, they're going to pay down or pay off their mortgage. And this is the top one here, the mortgage. I mentioned that. And by the way, folks, it's not just about mortgage. A lot of people don't own homes. If they're renting and you're the breadwinner, you want to make sure that a roof is over the head of your loved ones and your family. So you got to take into account, providing some type of income to pay for rent for a certain time period, maybe 5 years or something like that. So, if you've got a $2,000, monthly rent, 2,000 times 12 months, that's $24,000. You multiply that times 5, you're talking over $100,000 that you may want to allocate to protect, even if you're not owning a home, but you're renting. So that comes into play. Same thing applies to other debts such as student loans or credit card debts. Those are going to get paid off hopefully somewhere down the road. And you've got your children, they're going to be grown up. So that, at some point, they'll hopefully leave the home one day. They're not around forever. And if they're grown and out of the house, we don't need to worry about their education. So education hopefully is either paid for or they paid for it. And that's something that's taken care of. Okay, so the next big thing on this and the next big need is income. We talked about that, net income. And, clients may, wish to retire someday. Hopefully they do, and the question regarding income is how much income do they want to replace? Which is, why we discussed the concept of net income on the previous slide that we did, and how long that net income is needed. So, that income hopefully is going to be covered. And just as with the percentage of income to replace when calculating the net income, I'm not making a recommendation for how long or how many years. It's probably something that, it's going to be an individual discussion with your clients. Now, it's noteworthy that, all these needs up above, if these things go to plan, they may no longer be necessary to insure in the future. Those things above this line, they could be looked at as temporary in nature, okay? Again, this is a general statement. Your clients could have different things, but those things above the line, could be what we call temporary needs. On the other hand, you're going to notice, on the bottom below this line, some remaining expenses that are probably going to be a concern. And if the client's married, they're going to want to make sure that they're going to maintain some form of coverage to protect the spouse. That's that survivorship coverage. Final expenses come into play. And in addition, we're talking about, chronic illness and income tax, all these things that we talk about. So, you can see that everything above the line on the slide represents possible temporary needs, but the things below the line represent the potential permanent need that they're going to have for the rest of their life. It's not a matter of when you die or if you die, but when you die. So some of you may have noticed that we haven't quantified any amounts. We haven't put any dollar amounts yet. We're going to do that in a minute. But we've only established that some of the needs could be temporary and then some of them could be permanent. Let me spin it just a little different way here, okay? Some of you may have seen this, but if you haven't, this is a great little analogy here. I call this the financial risk spectrum. Now, this graphic shows you some of the risks that Americans face before and during retirement. Early in life, there's three major risks in my consideration that individuals and families face. And we're talking about college education or trade school, as we talked about, mortgage payoff, and income replacement. And these are quite large risks when you start out working. You're young, in your 20s or even 30s. These amounts are quite large. But as you see, as we go to the right, these risks tend to get smaller over time. And so all three of these major financial concerns, hopefully, they've subsided or disappeared by the time you retire. And this vertical line. This kind of represents your hypothetical retirement age, 65, 70, whatever that age is. Hopefully, when you reach retirement, all of these things on the left have been taken care of, or they have gone away. So this is a temporary coverage, or the type of insurance you need if you die. However, a lot of clients don't, they don't see a reason for life insurance being beneficial during their retirement years. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of this so that you can have those meaningful conversations with your clients. As we get older and these risks decline, these other ones, they emerge and they tend to become a lot bigger over a time period. You're looking at financial risks, and that's, the financial risks include, the possibility of living too long, low interest rates, stock market corrections, political instability. You've got rising healthcare costs. This is where we're talking about living benefits on, on our life insurance policies and how important it is. It's pretty clear to most people that the older you get, the more you spend on healthcare. And much of those healthcare costs are not covered by Medicare or your insurance coverage. We're talking about chronic illness or critical illness. The potential reduction of Social Security income is also something you need to be aware of. If your client is a couple, you've got a couple and they're receiving Social Security income, be aware that the Social Security income that the surviving spouse receives is going to be reduced when one of them dies. And it's going to be reduced by a minimum of 33%, a third, and as much as half. The question is the surviving spouse ready to survive on that much less Social Security income? So these are the questions that you ask yourself when you're looking at this. This is the financial spectrum. So once you understand about the difference between the short-term pre-retirement needs on the left side and the long-term in-retirement financial risks, what you can do is you can begin to think about how to create a life insurance policy portfolio that's going to address both concerns. The type of insurance you need if you die versus the type of insurance you need when you die. So let's illustrate how this could work in practice. So I'm going to throw up a hypothetical case study here and follow along with me. I've got a gentleman here, John Smith. He's 30 years of age. We're going to do Ohio since Ohio's our home office. We're going to do Ohio in that example. And he's married. He's got 2 kids. Started out young. He's got a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. He's making some pretty good money, $70,000. Owns a home. They got a mortgage here. Doesn't have a lot of debt outside the mortgage. That's the biggest one. That's usually the biggest financial commitment that you got when you're young. And you ask them those important questions. What's important to you? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Where do you see yourself in 20 years? What would happen if you're not alive? And the answer is he wants to protect his family. And he wants to look at, maybe covering college costs in the event of his untimely death. Maybe not all of the college costs, but, hopefully there's some money put aside to provide some type of financial windfall if something happens. And that's where you are with that. So now that we've gone through the needs analysis that we talked about, let's create those, that issue here. And let's look at the example here as it pertains to this. So we've got a mortgage here. He's got $200,000, let's just say. These are all, numbers that are just hypothetical, obviously, but let's just walk you through a sample. They own a home. They still owe $200,000 on it. In addition to that, they've got some debts that they've incurred. They've got credit card debts, maybe $25,000. He's got 2 kids. He's kind of concerned about them, making sure that they're going to be okay. Maybe he started a college fund. Maybe he hasn't, but, college can cost a lot. And, a 4-year college today may cost as much as $100,000 per kid. But let's just say that he wants to, put away $50,000. I'm making this up, folks. You can use any number you want to, but we use $50,000 for 2 kids. That's $100,000 that we need to earmark for education. In addition, his net income, he's making $70,000. So, $70,000. And again, this is a hypothetical number, folks. But if I took 60% of his gross income, the net income is $42,000. So we're going to look at 60% of his income that we want to protect, at least for the next 10 years, just so that his spouse can get her, his or her, feet on the ground and keep going. So let's protect that income for the next 10 years. That's $42,000. That's $420,000. In addition to that, you've got, liquidity. You want to make sure that you provide some type of financial windfall for the spouse. So we got $50,000 marked there. Chronic illness, obviously that could be a big variable, but let's just let's just assume that we want to have $100,000 put away to meet those needs for custodial care that's not going to be covered by Medicare, like I indicated. And then final expenses, that could be any number, but let's just average, let's just say $15,000 for a burial. That may or may not be realistic, but let's just use that number to begin with. And then finally, you've got your taxes here, and the taxes are, let's just say $25,000. Now, the taxes is something that the discussion thread you have is finding out if they've got a qualified plan. If they're contributing to a retirement plan, like a 401, or they've got an IRA, if they pass away, that gross amount doesn't automatically come to the family and you pass go and don't pay any taxes. There's income taxes due. It's income taxes due either as a survivor income to the survivor, or maybe to the children. So taxes will be paid on it. And let's just assume that, and again, this is a hypothetical number, but let's just say you had $100,000 type of qualified retirement. It could be as much as 25% taxation on that distribution, federal, state income tax, local income tax. You could be facing, and I'm just making this number up, 25%. And so we want to make sure that those taxes are covered. That's $25,000. So that's where I come up with that number there. So again, we're looking at the type of coverage. This is term insurance. All these things up above, hopefully they're going to go away, and by retirement, this is all met. But this is term. This could be a term coverage, a term solution to this. And then those things down below, these are permanent issues here that are going to be around. You want to make sure that the survivor income is there. Chronic illness is going to be there. Final expenses, taxes. So this may be something where permanent insurance is going to be the solution for this particular client. So now that we've gone through the needs analysis, what we need to do is we need to show the client potential solutions. Remember, the question is, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Client, if this is a concern of yours, if I could show you a solution or solutions to this problem, and it's within your budget to solve, do you want to look at some of those solutions? Who's going to say no? So you're going to now create these solutions. And generally, there's three different ways that we can approach it. I'm going to use a generalized approach to this. Three different ways. The first one is you can buy all term insurance. You can place term insurance in force on the insured, and certainly it might be the least expensive way to go. But just as we go through the needs analysis, it may not offer the protection the client potentially needs forever. So that's term insurance. The second solution is, hey, let's just sell them all permanent insurance. That's great. We're a believer of permanent insurance. Let's sell them all permanent insurance. Now he's got insurance. He's got coverage for life, right? But guess what? It's going to be prohibitively expensive. And that's the challenge, because not a lot of clients can afford, the protection on this. And all these numbers that we added before, it adds up to nearly $1 million. And we'll show you that in just a minute here. Here's the last option. The last option combines the two, both term insurance and permanent insurance. And that blending allows the client to have affordable coverage for their needs, which can be both temporary and also planned for potential permanent needs as well. So here's where the numbers are. If we added all those numbers up, like I said, it's about $950,000 if you add all those left-hand columns up that I indicated here. So let me show you how these three solutions work, okay, for the client. Let's start with that term insurance, okay? Remember, if we've got a 30-year-old male, and considering his age, let's just assume that he's preferred non-tobacco, and we run some numbers here, non-tobacco, and if we were able to, we combined all these numbers, and it's, we rounded up, it's actually about $935,000, but let's round it up because the numbers are easier to explain, up to $950,000. If we were to sell this client a 30-year term policy, he'd be paying about $85 a month. That's that pre-authorized draft on a monthly basis. He's paying about $85. Okay, and that's good. That's pretty cheap, isn't it? Okay, that's pretty nice. And you'd think, okay, that's great. It's not costing an arm and a leg, and they'd buy him nearly $1 million of death benefit. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to all these approaches, obviously, but the big advantage here is, as we said, that term insurance could be considered simple. It's very cheap. They can easily afford it. They can understand it. Here's the downside, folks, that after 30 years, the client no longer has any coverage. That coverage is going to go away, or it's going to become prohibitively expensive. That 31st year, it goes from $85 a month to who knows how much, thousands of dollars a month. And that client says, I'm not going to pay that. I can't afford it. So what do? They drop the coverage, okay? And that's the difference between them. That's the downside to it. As a client, he doesn't have any more coverage, and he very well may outlive his insurance protection. Hopefully at 30 years of age, you think, well, by the time I'm 60, I'm still alive. And even more, when that term period expires, he or she may not be able to be approved for a new life insurance. If they want to get some more life insurance, maybe they've had some medical underwriting issues or that are going to come into play, and they say, well, you're not even insurable at this point. So going to the permanent solution, okay, here, let's just assume that, we write an indexed UL for $950,000, and we're paying premium that takes the policy all the way to age 120 based on cash values, okay? The estimated premium, we just kind of ran this to take it out to 120, is going to be just under $370,000 a month. $369 a month. Again, this is for a 30-year-old, assuming he's getting a preferred non-tobacco rate. Now, we know that this is the most expensive option. And you got the possibility that that he could be overinsured later in his life. He doesn't need $1 million for life. He needs it now, but not forever. Some clients, they're not going to have any interest in paying this much, $370. That's a lot of money on a monthly basis, especially if you're young and maybe you're not making as much money. However, there's a lot of advantages to the approach. We know that. The first one is we've offered a solution that's going to be permanent. It's going to cover him for all of his life. And because it's an index UL, he's got flexibility in his premiums. He can pay more, he can pay less. He can adapt to the client's changing needs. And, obviously, and this is one of the main reasons we look at IULs as a solution, is that the client can also benefit from possible cash accumulation. And now he's got chronic illness coverage. We add the chronic illness rider to the policy on the contract as long as the policy stays in force. So that's another solution. Okay, this brings us to our third solution. This is important. Stay with me on this, okay? The blended plan. We call that blended plan, where we combine some permanent with some term insurance. Again, continuing with that same 30-year-old male, he's preferred non-tobacco. The premiums that we're paying here, let's just split it, and let's just say, that if we can put $750,000 in force for term insurance for 20 years, and I picked 20 years because the kids are going to be grown, they're going to be out of college. Hopefully, a lot of the expenses are going to be covered. That's $42.50 a month. Then what we want to do is we want to add a permanent insurance to this. We may refer to this type of approach as laddering or layering your total insurance needs into 2, maybe even 3 policies. In this situation is 2 policies. So we're gonna look at adding a $200,000 policy, which is permanent, and that $200,000 would cost his client just under $90 a month, $89.52. So we add these 2 premiums, and now our combined premium is much more reasonable. It's $132.02 a month. Now remember, beginning in the 21st year, what happens is this premium goes away and he's only paying $89. And I just chose 20 years because let's just say his children, they're grown by then. And again, that term duration is it's individual consideration. You could put a little less on there. You could put 500,000, but again, it's going to be higher premium. This is where you need to have that discussion about what the client can actually afford to solve this problem. So what some people like about the blended approach that I talked about, the laddering approach, blended approach, is that we've still found affordable coverage for the client as opposed to using all permanent insurance. Yeah, it's more expensive than just using term, but we know that this approach is going to allow us to have some of our needs permanently insured and covered as long as that IUL stays in force. And the client also has the benefit of having that chronic illness coverage. and all the benefits that come along with the cash values. You know, if he gets a job promotion, now he has some maneuverability and flexibility maybe to put more money into it and grow that money tax deferred and have it pull out cash free, all that cash value buildup inside the IUL. So generally, if this needs analysis process is implemented that we talked about here, it's going to require that the agent, to better educate the client, you have to have those conversations about the difference between term and permanent needs that the client has throughout their lifetime. And also, you know, instead of just using term insurance, what you're doing is you're educating your client and talking to them about the value of permanent insurance. In this particular example, our IUL product. And then finally, you know, the agent's going to need to administer the delivery of the two separate policies and make sure that the client completely understands what they're getting into. So what we've done here in summary is, you know, this is a needs analysis that's something you can incorporate into your practice. It's going to take a little time. It may help you, but we know that it's going to help educate your clients more and your prospects more about the potential benefits of permanent insurance. Don't just be a ticket taker and, you know, have your client call in or prospect call in and say, hey, I need a $100,000 term policy. Don't just take the application. Ask him, okay, we can do that, but where did you come up with this $100,000? Is that what you need? Well, it just seems like a good number. Okay, well, I understand that, but if you don't mind, I'd like to just ask you a few more questions. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to take them through that needs analysis and determine not only the right amount, but the right duration. And you're going to write insurance applications, and you're going to put policies in force that are going to better meet your financial needs of your clients. And in the end, what it does is it provides a much more comprehensive approach to life insurance planning. And that's what the needs analysis is all about. So that's it in a nutshell. I hope that all of you were taking good notes, but what I want to do at this point is to open it up for any questions and answers. I know that Sandy's on the phone too, available to help me, but at this point, Jeffrey, I want to open it up and see if we've got any Q&A coming in and if we can help people understand this approach a little bit better.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, Mark. The platform we're on right now will not allow them to communicate unless they want to raise their hand and I can unmute them. Or if they want to just type in under the Q&A or under the chat, and then you can answer it that way. But it's not really set up where they can just answer questions unless we unmute them or they could ask questions through the chat.
If we could go to the chat and see if anyone just wants to type in any questions that they have, let's try it that way, Jeff.
There were some statements that were put on the chat if you want to look at that. And I know Sandy was answering a couple of these. I don't know if they're really questions or more just statements, you know, right? Would you agree, Sandy? So I wasn't sure.
Yeah, there was really only, someone referenced the Benny IRA and I put a response in for there. Talked about the potential of a 30-year-old remarrying, and yes, that would definitively change their, plan.
Absolutely. So if there's any questions, they can put it in the chat now. If not, we're just going to go ahead and stop and we'll go from there. That was great stuff. Mark, thank you. And Sandy, thank you guys for being on, unless anybody puts any more questions.
Yeah, and we're always available. Again, we want to remind you that Sandy and I are available to help you with discussions about your clients. I've got a guy, I got a gal. I don't know exactly where this is going to lead to, but I could certainly benefit from bouncing an idea off of you. That's where you pick up the phone or you email Sandy or me and let us look at that development of that client case there, the design of that case, and make sure that we're helping you understand this needs approach. Like I said, it's a much more thorough process than just ticket taking and taking that $100,000 or that $250,000 application. And we see that quite a lot. Not that I'm saying that that's not the right amount. What I'm saying is when we see these face amounts coming in on a regular basis, we really wonder if the agent has done a thorough job in determining the right amount of insurance and the right type. And I get a better feel when I get an application coming in and it's for $633,000. $633,000 may be because maybe it was a little more thorough approach to determining exactly how much was needed and how long it was needed.
Got it.
Anything else on that, Sandy, that you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I think that in general, we are working as a company in order to put like a one-pager together so it's easier to gather this information. But Jeff, I mean, you may already have that available to your team. Yeah, yeah. I mean, most agencies do have some type of format, and you just have to get comfortable with that. What I have found, especially in this new world of agencies, so we're not just a PGA agencies anymore. We have lots of different layers in the companies that we do business with. Is that people are a little nervous about asking their clients about their income and their assets. And they have to get comfortable with that. If you're going to make a recommendation that's going to solve a financial problem for them, then you have to get comfortable with asking them about that information. You don't have to manage all of their assets. You don't have to dial it down to exact nickels and dimes. But in general, if they see your level of comfort and respect for their information, then they're going to be much more open with you.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. Plus it also helps with suitability. Just making sure that it's suitable.
Oh, definitively, yeah.
Yeah. But Mark, Sandy, I don't think there's any other questions. Thank you guys again for great training. We recorded it, so it'll be on our phone app as well, and we'll have it in our back office. So again, thank you guys so very much. Unless there's anything else you have to say, Mark, did you want to close out?
Now that we always appreciate the opportunity to earn your business, and don't be strangers. Keep in touch with us, and let's make this a very successful run here. We want to make this the best year that you've ever had.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Everybody have a great day. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Mark and Sandy.
Bye-bye.